Good morning, afternoon, or evening. I am Stephanie Joy with All Things Social Security and the attorney at Joy Disability. You're about to see what should be a question and answer format type of chat from our live session on a particular topic that we find that a lot of people keep asking about. So I'm sharing it here. If there are pieces that could have been added that weren't added during the live, because it's a kind of a fast-paced Q&A that we do every Wednesday at 1 p.m. You might just find that I added something to the end of it to give it a little more clarity and a little more details for those that are interested in that particular topic. So check to see if that's at the end. Otherwise, enjoy the video. Bye-bye. Okay, so Dolphin asks or says, impairments are an important topic for anyone needing to know the difference between disability and an impairment. So often I need to clarify to people who think I'm not disabled. And you already won your case, right, RD? Well, I look at it this way. Almost everybody that walks the face of the earth has an impairment. Maybe not the super young, but, it could be, let's say we're all over 30, everyone's got something wrong with them. It could be I have glasses. My eyes are impaired. However, when I wear the glasses, they are no longer considered impaired. They're 20/20. So because the treatment works to make my vision what it's supposed to be, my capacity to see, it's not an impairment that would be considered severe, I think. You know how we have to find the impairment that's properly diagnosed. Yes, I have a need for prescription. Is that a severe impairment? In other words, does it limit the basic work functions in any way? And ironically, yeah. So what does it mean if I have glasses? Well, I don't even know what it means. Like, I'm sure I could still be a pilot, right? Doesn't mean I couldn't be a brain surgeon, but it would affect so little that it's not going to have a ramification on this 12,000 jobs. So I feel like we're all impaired, and some impairments are so pervasive that they rise to the level of disabling us from full-time work of any kind that exists. The jobs have to exist in substantial numbers, not like the miracle job riding a unicorn across the sky. That job doesn't count because there's only one. And I think my cousin has that job. So impaired versus disabled. Yeah, it's a big difference, right? You are so right there, Dolphin. Heather says, yes, it just says who they received information from on what date. Right. That's not the data. That's not the visit date. That's just when they received it. It's almost a ridiculous denial letter. Some list names or a specific office within healthcare system. Yep. I'm requesting hearing now, hopefully submitting it today. Yeah. And when you do, you're doing it online, right, Heather? Maybe next week, call the ALJ and say, can you please email me a copy of my file? And you could even say, and how do I know what's come out? Can I call you when I need to see if you got something? Or, I want to get my file now so I know what they didn't have below because they didn't send me a copy. But can I, I want it from you. Can I also get one, maybe like a month before the hearing, or at least call you and see if my list and what you've seen in what gets emailed to you now and what you've added to it, and just to see if there's anything more. I want to make sure that you have everything. Because when you get to that hearing, Heather, the judge is going to say, is the file complete? I have here in the medical portion, which is section F, 1F through 25F. Is there anything else we're waiting on? And if you know that 1 through 24F were what were there when you got denied on recom, and you sent in 3 things, not 1, medical evidence pieces, that would be 25, 26, 27 is what you would at least expect it to be up to. You're going to want to talk to them about it. So they tend to be pretty good. They're not like working with the SSA lower levels. They're not perfect up there for sure, but their office is more professionally run and more, I think, claimant friendly. All right. But that's what you're going to want to do. You need to know what's in there. If you have a representative, guys, they can, unless they barely ever do this, they can see what's in your file on any given day. So they can go in there and see what is up to, 30F or whatever. Hey guys, Stephanie Joy here from Joy Disability. Just wanted to touch on the misconception that a medical condition or a diagnosis that is a significant one is going to win a case because you have a serious diagnosis. Not true. You need the diagnosis to get to the next step in the sequential evaluation process, but the diagnosis itself isn't going to win the case. With the pseudo exception of compassionate allowances, of which there are not that many relative to the amount of diagnoses out there. And even with a compassionate allowance, you still have to have the current evidence of current treatment and certain criteria met for that to stand. Okay, so what does this mean? Diagnosis isn't going to matter. It matters. It's one of the first steps in the evaluation process that the SSA must go forward with. You have to have valid diagnosis, one or more diagnoses, obviously, might produce more impairments and limitations functionally. And the diagnosis has to be diagnosed in an acceptable manner. And it typically is, so that's not something that I would really worry about. If you were diagnosed with something many years ago before you became disabled, and by the way, that's why diagnoses don't win a case, because most people have diagnoses and they work for years thereafter. It's when the diagnosis of this the medically determinable impairment, MDI, once it's determined to be a severe one, which that's not a huge burden either, I might add, that's never our big fight. Once that happens and it starts limiting the person enough that it eliminates their current job is when they tend to either be terminated because they couldn't function well enough to satisfactorily perform the job duties. And by the way, there's a video on getting a statement from your employer about that, which can be really helpful. But also, they get out of the first job, then they have to actually, if they have a case, then they have to prove that their impairments prevent all jobs. So that's a whole nother term of art and a whole bunch of legal input, factual and legal input that goes into proving that if it's so. Okay, so the diagnosis itself, again, is not going to be the deciding factor. It's just going to get you across into the next yes in the tree of yes, no's. If yes, you're disabled, or if yes, you're not disabled. It gets you down to where they'll still consider your case versus knocking it out because there's nothing more in a diagnosis. So the diagnosis being currently treated for now, not 2 years ago only, now. I mean, it's nice if it was treated with some duration, for sure. That's more longevity, and durational records are best. But you can't win unless it's now, generally speaking. So you need to be treating for that impairment. And of course, as you'll see in my other videos, treat for every other little one too, not just the one that took you out of your job, because that took you out of one job out of 12,000 that you have to prove you can't do. But those other little impairments that you don't really think about much because you can do workarounds and not have to use that limb or that finger or that this or that. They're the ones that can actually make your case be a winnable one. Because remember, you can't prove, it's not like workers' comp where you prove that you're 70% impaired. It's a totally different definition. And we have to prove that there are zero, for all intents and purposes, zero occupations we can do full time. So even if we could do some activities part-time, that doesn't count against you, unilaterally, but that we can't do the job that exists in substantial numbers in the economy full-time. So if we can do one job out there that there's only 2 of them in the entire country, that's probably not going to be considered substantial numbers. So it's a whole, more of an official number, a numbering, and they have these, the vocational experts provide the numbers. They use the dictionary of occupational titles and other resources to find out the supposed numbers in the economy. The information is often very outdated. There was a big news article about that finally, what we've been complaining about for a long time. But anyway, so the medical records from your current treatment are not only going to say that there's a diagnosis, but they're also going to, if your doctor is, in my opinion, properly doing his job, or your NP or whoever, describing how they affect you day to day. Because, let's face it, a diagnosis of something that is not terminal and doesn't affect us much, who really cares? I'm diagnosed with a freckle up here, but it doesn't bother me. Is it an impairment of sorts? Sure, but it's not, it doesn't bother me. It doesn't limit my work effort. So, I mean, it might if I was going to be like a porcelain model or something, but I'm not. So it doesn't knock out all these substantial jobs. So you have to have current treatment with all of those diagnoses for your strongest case. Any that you forego and decide is too inconvenient to treat for, just know that you are diminishing the strength of your case. Doesn't mean you might not still win by any means, but you have diminished the strength of it by and large. So diagnosis won't get you there. It's how the functional limitations are caused, to what extent, how severely, and is it enough to prevent all occupations? simple, sedentary, 5th grade skills, unstressful, supposedly. I think all jobs are stressful, but anyway, that's not how they look at it. Routine, 1-step, 2-step for those that can't remember very well. We've got to eliminate all those jobs one way or another. So diagnosis, treatment, 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 diagnostic test, treatment, treatment. Can I emphasize it anymore? Anyway, diagnosis isn't going to win it. You have to treat. And you have to treat with certain providers, not certain providers, certain professionals for a stronger case. Some professionals are acceptable medical evidence, some are not. So you need to know the difference. So do your homework or find someone who can do it for you. Okay? Alrighty. Hope that helps. Bye.